What's up, everybody? This is the Collective Objective. My name's Justin, and I am one of the hosts of the Collective Objective. Tonight, I have Destiny with me as my co-host, and we have Matthew Sampson as a guest. Tonight, we're going to kind of take a step back from the politics that we normally talk about, and we are going to discuss mental health and specifically how we deal with mental health. Kind of get away from the stigmas of we don't talk about mental health. So after everybody does their introductions, I'm going to do a brief mental health video, mental health awareness video, just with some resources that are available if you're struggling, some outlets that you can use to get some help if you feel like you need it. So with that, I'm Justin. I am a weird guy, I guess, but I identify mostly with the left. I don't like to subscribe to any specific agenda, but I would say that I am pretty socialist. If I had to circle a box, I guess you would say that I'm a socialist or an anarchist, or I don't know what the fuck I am, but I know that I'm all for equal rights and social justice. So that's where I sit. So with that, I'll pass the mic to Destiny, let her do her introduction, and then we'll get down to Matt.
I'm Destiny, a proud millennial. And yeah, I definitely lean left. I don't really belong to any political party, so I can't say I'm a Democrat or anything. I'm just very progressive in that I want equality for everybody and things like healthcare for everybody, good education for everybody. So I will pass it on down.
Yes, I'm Matt, and at one point, I think I actually really characterized myself as more of a centrist Republican, right-leaning, and I always did value conservative values, but I also thought what today is political, a lot of the social issues like equality were never really political issues for me because it was like just humanity, common sense values. But now in today's world, they've all become polarizing things. So that's what the left has now embraced. And that's really more of how I migrated, because those are more important now than really just stupid, inane policy issues. So I guess I'm now converted to left.
Welcome aboard. It's better over here. I'm just kidding. So yeah, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is just some of the personal things that I've gone through, and I feel like a lot of times people feel like they can't talk about mental health. Like it's there's a stigma behind it. People feel like they'll be judged if they talk about it, and I feel like, you know what, let's kick that down. Let's talk about it. Let's get rid of that. This might evolve a little bit into like the healthcare topic a little bit, just talking about like why healthcare is important, why it needs to be available to everybody. But you know, I feel like for the most part, this is a pretty unifying topic, is mental health, and we can kind of get rid of that the stereotype and stigma behind it by just being open about our own situation. Like, it's out here on the internet, but you know, it takes a special kind of person, I think, to judge you for what you're going through with your mental health. But we'll see. There's always trolls out there, but we're quick on the block. So the one rule is don't be a dick. So with that being said, I'm going to just do a brief video with some mental health resources that are available. If you're struggling, don't hesitate. These resources are available. Shit, if you're struggling and you don't want to use these resources, if you want to just DM me, I will pick up the phone and talk to you. I promise. So there's outlets available. So it is better on the left in that. Just don't hesitate to use them. So yeah, just And if you need to, actually, I'll post a comment really quick. When everybody else is sharing, I'll post a comment on those resources so you can just click a link and I'll take you there. So with all that being said, I'll just kind of open up my personal experiences with mental health. Growing up, my brother was sick with heart disease, with a problem. Um, he ended up having to get a heart transplant, passed away. I also struggled with addiction for a long time. Um, so these things kind of led me to depression. Couldn't get over some of the past issues that I gone through. Some of with addiction with my brother. I think it was all kind of correlated, where I turned to drugs and alcohol because I didn't want to deal with the underlying issues. Recently, I had gone through a divorce, and I went and I talked to the doctor, and I was like, "Hey, I'm not feeling so good about this." They put me on antidepressants, and then after a while, I realized that I'm not knocking pharmaceuticals at all. If that's what works for you, then do it. But for me, it was more about having to dig deep and do some self work and meditation and kind of like really discovering who I was. I kind of lost myself, both in my marriage and in my divorce. I just kind of um, forgot who I was just as a person. Not like I was always identifying myself attached to other people. Like I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a husband. I didn't really take the time to discover who I am. And through this whole process of healing, that's one thing that I felt helped me a lot, is like, who is Justin? And just doing a lot of, I don't know how aware everybody is, but cognitive behavioral therapy, where you kind of like retrain your brain. So you have a thought and you take that thought and you either throw it away or you figure out a way to like retrain that thought into being something more productive um, for your own happiness. So that's kind of my take on it, and I don't know who wants to go next.
No? Okay. Well, I can kind of, I've gone through a metamorphosis myself. A lot of dealing with having self-confidence in making my own decisions in life. I've always searched for my own family's approval in doing everything. And I found that really stifled who I was. And I was generally the shortest person in school. So that was kind of traumatizing, because kids are not nice about that. And so that really broke me down a lot. And at one point, I think, like, I got to that point where I felt like suicide wasn't a terrible option, but I never thought that I could ever bring myself to go through with that. But it was that equilibrium of where it just didn't seem like a terrible option. And but I didn't have that feeling like I was going to go over the cliff. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Like it almost like it wouldn't be a terrible thing, but you wouldn't go through with it, but you were at the point where dying almost seemed like the best option.
Almost,
but you wouldn't
yeah.
you wouldn't do it, but just like you'd be okay with it almost.
Yeah. It just, kids are just really aren't nice about that. It's just, it was hard to deal with. But as soon as like I broke free from my family, I found like some kind of weird self-confidence that just was like, I knew I could do things, and that's where I became an event planner. And it was just, I broke out of my shell, but then I did too much. And it was like, then it came down to not really dealing with people and having right relationships. I always used them as a manipulated tool, where I, like, in a 5-minute conversation, I could know how to manipulate you. And so I took it that far. But then I had therapy where it just totally helped me change in how I was able to balance my emotional mind with my logical mind. And I could argue with passion, but not be clouded in judgment. And that's what's the most valuable thing for me.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I was bullied too in school. From kindergarten all the way up until the day I graduated, I was constantly bullied. One of the reasons was because I was short. Another was because have I need help because I have dyslexia. So I have so I had so people picked on me for that, and that's one of the reasons I have such a problem with the R word, because they would constantly call me that. So
There's the R word and the F word. Those are like the two go-tos.
so yeah, I don't like that word, and that's one of the reasons that stems from that. I I've been suicidal, and actually did try to commit it one time. I actually tried to take all my antidepressant meds when I tried to commit suicide. So luckily, a friend came in right after I had swallowed them all and like shoved her finger down my throat and like sat with me all night, and we just cried together. And now anytime I've gotten to that point, I just think of my daughter, and I don't want to do that to her. I could never put her through that, and she's the one thing that keeps me pushing to want to survive. But yeah, it is always on the mind. The depression and anxiety doesn't help. You get into that headspace where you think, everybody hates me, or if somebody doesn't talk to you for a while, oh my gosh, they're mad at me, or I've done something wrong. It's my fault. I was in an abusive marriage, so yeah, I've got it pretty stacked when it comes to mental health.
So, so how do you all what works for you as far as processing and making sure that you're, of sound mind and body, and what how do you push forward and keep like strive to be better, and live a healthy life and not let the mental health it's really what it comes down to is thoughts for a lot of depression, anxiety. So how do you let that not bother you and still live, or how do you get over it and still live a productive life?
For me, it's honestly having friends that have the same kind of things, anxiety, depression, because we know and understand where we're coming from. So, if we're distant, we're not going to hold it. We're not going to be like, no, it's not because we're mad. We understand we're all going through some stuff and need a minute or whatever. And having an understanding spouse helps. If the dishes sit for several days, he understands it's probably because I'm going through something. So it's just, yeah, having a good support group.
I would say a lot of when I like politics is like really my drive forward. And when I go through these things, and a lot of people get exasperated in talking through a lot of like circular logic and things, I don't get exhausted with that because I can reset myself to knowing like where I was lost. And I'm always trying to go for an angle. So if this angle doesn't work, I'm willing to try a different angle because I find it really valuable for the people that I break through with. It's like they become really strong, great people to be part of my life then. It's because you put that effort in trying to break through. It's just nobody's willing to give, I guess, the right attention or the right willingness to try to understand them. And many don't ever get to this point. So I'm not saying I have a breakthrough with even the majority of the people I interact with, but I find value in just even breaking through one here and there. And that's really my drive.
One thing that I think isn't talked about enough is so we're all in these groups together, and there's a lot of trolls. And how do you not let, when somebody, because a lot of times they'll attack your personal appearance, they'll even go as low as your family, and they'll attack your family. How do you not let that bother you? And still, because I feel like we're all in these groups for the same purpose. It's to like kind of spread love and understanding, the three of us especially. How do you I mean, every once in a while, I know that we all will troll back a little bit, we'll clap back, but how do you not let that derail you and still stay positive and try to keep striving forward with that message of love and unity and coming together?
Well, my answer is because I've failed so many times. I've had so many bad conversations in the past. I've blown up on people, and I've let it affect me. And now it's happened so much, I can understand that I can almost predict what the insults are going to be to me, that it's not real. It's just like a pattern. And so, like, if someone's going to come at me about what I look like, it's always going to be accusing me of being Chinese. I mean, every single time someone will say you're Chinese. It happened in the group too. And it just, you get numb because you know it's predictable. I can't take it personally anymore. You know, they're just coming from their own place of ignorance is not the right word, but it's the word that's coming to mind right now.
I think it's a fair word. I do. It's a fair assessment. If you, but
Yeah, and I don't think it's necessarily healthy to become so numb to it that you don't let it affect you ever. I think it's actually a good thing to let it affect you because it reminds you that you're still human. You still have feelings. It's the trolls that seem to, they don't care who they hurt, and they don't seem, when you do occasionally hit back, it doesn't affect them. They're so far gone that you're never going to get through to those people. So yeah, I do take it to heart, and I tend to be and I'm an empath, so I do take things very personally. So for
really,
me, it's taking a break, just walking away. I need to walk away.
Destiny, can you describe what an empath is for people that don't know?
Yeah, basically, I can feel what other people are feeling. So if, like, I've done it before, if I feel like I can just feel like, for example, Justin is upset, something's bothering them, and I can immediately pick up on those feelings, and I know about it, or I can kind of predict when somebody is having a bad day. So if I randomly contact you as a friend and I'm like, hey, how are you? It's because I was picking up on your feelings. So it's very hard for like crowded places because you pick up on everybody's feelings and emotions. So crowds, I don't really like large crowds. It can be too overwhelming to get all those feelings at once. So it's, in a way, you can almost read minds in some way because you can pick up on those feelings and like vibes. So it's difficult for empaths to function in those groups and not take it to heart.
Right. I know actually other people that are like that too, and they're important people in my life. And yeah, so Annette is apparently getting the same feelings of that pattern that's going through things. You just sometimes the only way you're going to strive is to get numb. I think I'd like to think, maybe I'm wrong, because I have been accused of being very numb, of refocusing it and becoming, I guess, passionate about whatever I debate about or talk about. So maybe just to refocus is what I do.
Hey Matt, can I tell you this though? Once people
Yes.
have started resorting to personal attacks, you've already won because
Hmm.
they have nothing left to beat you on what you're debating them about. So they go to the personal attacks, and it's to throw you off your game. It's they're trying to get you mad to throw you off your game because you're kicking their ass in debate. That's what it's really about. So,
I'm on board with that.
um,
And I can say as an empath, maybe that it's different for us because we can't shut it off. It's always on. So that's why we have to be more cautious in those groups. And you'll see like empaths tend to walk away from something because they know that they can no longer be around too much of the same negative energy. So there are many times where I have to take social media breaks because I can't. It's too much for me.
I think that's a really good point is the social media break. Like, so for me, one of the things that I do to like feel better is if I'm in a funk, I'll just go out, I'll leave my phone in the car, I'll drive out to the mountain. I don't live too far from the mountains. I'll just drive out to the mountains and I'll go get lost in the woods. And just having that like quietness and being in nature kind of resets my batteries. And then I just feel better and then I can go and take them on again, so to speak. But, actually the reason why I was on a hiatus for like I guess like 2 or 3 weeks was just because like I was going through so much and the toxicity of social media. I felt like I just needed a break. But here I'm back. I'm feeling good. Done with the withdrawals. For a little bit there, I was considering some things, but like Destiny had said earlier, my son kept me here. So whatever it is, whatever your higher power is, whatever works for you, that's what you got to do. You just sometimes you got to remove yourself from the situation and say, okay, would my son's life be better if I wasn't here? And the answer is no, it wouldn't. No matter, because at the end of the day, I know I'm a good dad. I don't drink, I don't do drugs. I spend time with him, so I know that if I wasn't in his life wouldn't be any better. So that, that's what works.
Yeah, and my daughter is an empath too, so she
Oh,
needs somebody to help her on that path of what it's like to be an empath. So,
Wow. I'd also say that kind of a reset I use as a tool is the group that I run is, I would say, kind of my out also. It's like there are good debate topics that just get ruined in that one type group. And
yeah.
so I'll take the subject and I'll put it into that group, and it's far less emotional, and just people will talk it out, and really it helps me untangle everything, and just instead of bottling up any emotion, it helps me, roll through it.
That you just brought up a good point is the bottling up of emotions, because that's how people can be self-destructive almost. Like when you internalize everything, you don't talk about it, and you bottle everything up. Eventually, you're going to blow. It's all going to come out eventually. So it's good. It's good that you found an outlet to kind of get that out. Nettie had said, I consider leaving political groups often, especially with those people who are extremely negative and trolly. I would say that Nettie, Matt, Destiny, we should never leave these groups. And as much as there's times where I'm like, fuck these people, I want to quit. I can't deal with the bigots. I can't do it. I'm like, well, if we all leave, then they have free roam to just be fucking dicks. So we got to push back. We can't quit.
I agree with that. I mean, without us, it would just be a cesspool.
Yep. It would. And then it's almost worse that way. At least there's like just say you're just kind of like you're not as dialed in on politics as we are, or social issues, and you're just seeing that's all you see. I could see how you could easily get pulled into that, especially because there's some like the Ben Shapiro's and Jordan Petersons of the world who are very clever about how they do it.
Yes.
So
It sucks because, yeah, Shapiro is a smart guy, but he's on the wrong side of the battle.
yep, I agree.
Yeah, but the my group, Blindsided, I handpicked everybody, so it's like I know every single person in there can have a rational ability in there. So I took the time through the years just making sure that this group it's kind of like a safe space, but it's not everyone agrees on everything all the time, if that makes sense.
But they're not going to be a dick about something if they don't agree with
Exactly.
you. Right. Yeah. That's kind of not the bigger Unity experiment group, but the smaller one. It's kind of the same premise. It's just, and it's not all politics. It's like post whatever you want. Just, here's your outlet.
Yes, exactly. So if it's like, that's why I try to reach out to some people. Like I found some of the people out of that group too, and some of them have really surprised me, and it's pretty amazing when you find them. I forget what his actually. It's like Stevis or something like that. I forget what his name is, but he's ardently pro-life, and he came at me in beginning, like just we were just butting heads and majorly, but I don't know what happened. It just clicked, and he just became like the most thoughtful person in all his arguments, and it was a pretty interesting metamorphosis. And so I totally respect that guy, even though completely ideologically we are so far apart.
But that's important.
Respect.
That's important. So you have found somebody that ideologically is completely different than you, but you can have an actual conversation about topics. And I feel like if more people were like that, we could actually find middle ground. Like, okay, this is what I want. This is what I want. And then through those conversations and massaging a little bit, you can kind of figure out, okay, well, we actually agree on this and we're completely opposite, but this is something we agree on. And then, on a macro level, if we have more of those conversations, then that's how we can actually start getting legislation. We start getting changes. And then I feel like once we get that stuff done, then we can start attacking some of the bigger issues. We just got to make some progress at this point. And it can't be when somebody has a full control, like when Trump had full control of the presidency, the Supreme Court, and the legislative. It's got to be when there's the checks and balances there. That's what I think. Because I feel like when somebody has full control, like Biden has the legislative and the presidency right now, he can kind of pass whatever he wants. It almost is bad because the people on the right are going to be like, oh, he's only doing that because he's got power. And it can be more divisive. Whereas if when there's that balance, there's actual conversations that happen and there's middle ground, and then people tend to agree more. It's always nice to see like bipartisan efforts, but it starts at that level. At the, just it can be. It doesn't even have to be these groups. It could be your neighbor. You just never know.
It's you framed it well. It's like you take both sides, and even though you're on the other side of it, politics should actually be what's in the middle, that compromise ground, and trying to work to just generally what's better for everyone. But even like statistically, the legislation that gets passed is like some of the most unpopular legislation. They never really pass anything that aligns with like the consensus of the people.
And which is weird to me because ultimately, like that would be the easiest stuff to pass. But like, okay, for example, marijuana legislation, decriminalizing marijuana. Everybody seems to agree. Both sides seem to agree. Okay, it's no worse than alcohol. Okay, so let's regulate it just like alcohol is regulated. But we still don't have that legislation. It's not even on the table yet.
And you know who the roadblock is?
Pharmaceutical industry. Oh, is it?
Yes, he will refuse to budge on that. So it's crazy. I mean, I totally will call that out. That's something I would totally criticize him on. That's a mistake. But we can have rational debates on that. Your person is not perfect, okay? But don't use it as like a gotcha. Oh, he's not perfect, so he's terrible. I will never vote for him. I'm just going to go with this option. No, just basically point out the flaws and just have a rational debate of why.
I feel like that mentality is why we end up with a Clinton versus Trump, or even Biden. Like, I didn't love Biden. I voted for him, but I didn't love him. And it's always like, well, it was this guy or that guy. I didn't have any other choice. I had to pick one, and this is who I picked. Well, in this country of brilliant minds and all of the great things that we've done in this country, we can't come up with better candidates. Come on.
Yeah. I think Annette is resetting us back on topic.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you good.
All right. The stigma, as it stands now, will not. I just haven't seen any breakthrough. I mean, like I tried to encapsulate earlier, we all have this very narrow idea when we hear mental health, what we think we know it is. But just like until we know, we hear it from each other. Like, I didn't know really the true battles that you were going through, Justin or Destiny, until you said it, because we all hide it very well, and that's in our nature. But until we're willing to listen to that, we're not going to break that stigma and understand that everyone's fighting these battles in some way. That really, until we understand that it's far greater than this idea that it's someone that should be committed, we're not going to break that stigma. I don't know how to break it. Conversations like this were immensely invaluable tonight. So that helps for sure.
Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon. It's just there's just too much stigma on it. And one thing I do, I mean, we've been in that group recently, and we've seen the trolls. And part of what I do is I always remember that on the other end of that troll is still a human being who may be going through stuff, and their trolling might be some way of a toxic coping mechanism for why they're doing what they're doing. I try to find the humanity in everybody. And I think that's what we all need to do, is remember that there are human beings on the other side of that screen.
Correct. And I wish I could be completely empathetic to whatever they're going through, but it's really hard to figure that out.
It's partially it's on them. They need to be the ones to break through. If they continue the toxic cycle of trolling on the internet, they're never gonna get that help they need.
I feel like
we should never feel guilty for them not reaching out to get the help they need.
I feel like with the trolls in particular, there's a lot of insecurity there, and that's why they troll. It's because they're insecure about themselves, for whatever reason. I mean, you could come up with probably a whole list of reasons. As far as the stigma of mental health is concerned, it can end in our lifetime. We just have to be more compassionate as a society. When somebody says, "Hey, I'm going through something," we don't judge them. We say, "Hey, how can I be a friend? How can I help you through that? Do you want to talk? Do you want to go to coffee?" And like Matt said, having these conversations is a big step. Like, just saying, like, "Hey, let's talk about it. This is how I've dealt with it, and this is what's worked for me. Maybe that would work for you, maybe not." But also, like, not being afraid to seek help. I feel like this is a male problem more than a female problem, but I feel like a lot of men struggle with reaching out for that help. They don't want to. They almost feel like they're a flawed person if they go to a counselor. You see it in marriages all the time, where like the wife will be like, "Hey, let's go to counseling." And the man's like, "I'm not going to counseling. If this doesn't work, we're not going to work." They just throw in the towel. So I think it can be fixed in our lifetime. There's a lot that needs to happen still. Also, the other thing that I'd like to talk about is a lot of times when we see these mass shooters, there's an underlying mental illness that is there. And it's because it goes untreated and undiagnosed, where it's probably because of the stigma that they don't seek the help that they need. They're probably so scared of being judged, and they're so scared of society making them some sort of like social pariah that they don't go and seek that help. And then ultimately it leads to something much worse.
Yeah, and pretty much what you're touching on is toxic masculinity. That's that whole boys don't cry, and you're not tough if you show emotions or feelings or share your feelings and emotions, and that's why toxic masculinity has become such a big thing. And you'll see it in the groups. They're like, well, I'm not a toxic male, and it's like,
Here, let me call you back.
But you are, and it's okay to own that. Just like, say, white privilege, it's okay to own that. We need to get to that point where it's okay to say, I need help, or I have problems with whatever, toxic whatever.
And to add on top of that, it's also, if you're honestly not white, you come with a stigma on that too, because like I had the run-in where I was just passionate in what I was debating, and all people would say is, man, you're angry, or like, why are you so hostile? And it's like, people don't really say that to white people. Honestly, they don't. It's not, or you have to say a lot to get to that point of someone accusing you of that. For me, I threw a couple curse words, but I didn't call them names. I wasn't really attacking their character. I was attacking the argument. And you would see I was going through the rationality of logic, but I was arguing with passion. But all people could say to me is that you're being hostile. And I think that stigma is hard to break too. It's just,
Yeah, and the females, we're overly emotional, or erratic or crazy. We get labeled a lot of times just for simply displaying our emotions. I mean, that's one of the reasons so many people didn't want Kamala to be president, is because she was an emotional woman.
Yep. Absolutely.
We need to work past those stigmas of everybody. Or Black people constantly get labeled as angry.
and a Black woman, yeah.
She's got a lot working against her.
Mm-hmm.
Angry, over emotional Black woman. Yeah, that's their go-to.
I want to say too, acknowledging that white privilege exists doesn't mean that you've done anything wrong. I think a lot of people think that, they're trying to accuse me of doing something wrong because I'm white. No, it's not about that. It's about acknowledging the systems and the country and the laws that we live in, and then how it's been built to benefit white people. And let's change that. Let's make it benefit everybody. On the panel I was on last night, it almost seemed like there was one person that was kind of against the whole premise that America's a racist country, and that seemed like that was like her logic behind it. Like, well, should I feel guilty because I'm white? No, it's not about feeling guilty. It's about acknowledging the problem and the systemic racial issues that we have in this country, and saying, hey, I'm not okay with it. Let's fix it. Let's change it. And by having that white privilege, you can be a voice and you can change it. Saying, shit, I shouldn't have these advantages. Everybody should be treated equally. And then I think there's other people that they don't feel guilt. They're scared. They don't want to lose that privilege. And that
one of the best ways to describe it is pie. For some reason, they view it as pie, and they feel that if you give someone else more equality, then their share of the pie gets smaller. And so that's their kind of line of thinking, that, well, I don't want less pie, so no, I don't want to give equal rights to another person, or women, or people that are in the minority. Or so yeah, they for some reason view it that way. And there's also that mentality of, they feel There's those that feel, well, people should just have to make it on their own. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. You can, if I could get out of it, you can get out of it.
Yeah, that's the wrong mentality. The whole mentality, like, well, it's America, anybody can make it. Like, no, it's not true. Like, I would say that probably 90% of the country works hard. 90% of the country isn't where they are economically that they should be if all you had to do is work hard.
We are actually statistically the hardest working country on per capita.
I believe it.
And we have very little to show for it in general.
The whole the whole American dream where you could, as long as you worked hard, you could afford to buy a house and you could live in suburbia and blah, blah, blah. That American dream doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. It's, the only reason why I was able to afford a house is because I live far from a city, but there's a lot of luxuries that I give up by doing that. But for majority of folks, that's not reality. Like, especially because majority of the labor in our country is in cities. And now we're that I'm getting off topic a little bit, but now we're at a point where that American dream's gone and the income disparity gap is growing more and more. And it's just going to get worse.
Well, that's not necessarily off topic because that does impact us. Finance is really big on our mental health.
Absolutely.
When you can't afford to pay the bills, that affects you. When you can't keep the lights on, when you can't feed your family, but you see that 1% who they have, 10 homes and 30 cars, and they keep telling you, oh no, we can't help those people.
They should just work harder.
Yeah, they need to just work harder. They can get where I am. Sure they can. In what reality?
Yeah.
That leads into a good topic that we could bring into this is healthcare in our country. So a lot of people can't afford good healthcare, which if you can't afford good healthcare, how are you going to get mental health help?
Yeah.
I would have probably never gone with the option of seeking out therapy if it wasn't covered by my insurance. And a lot of health insurances did not cover that prior to the ACA. That was a big thing that got included because it had to be inclusive. So a lot of people, if you have healthcare, they need to know that they have the option to seek out therapy.
Yeah,
and I think it's on. Oh, go ahead,
there are some workplaces that make those offers. I think Google is one, and a couple others that offer free mental health help. I mean, that should tell us something when big corporations have to provide that service because our government can't.
But that's actually it's not considered weird for most of the country because that is status quo. Mm-hmm. Whenever there's a failure in our government and what it should provide, it's all now, well, these good people were able to do it for us, they stepped in, so they're good. We'll just praise them, forget about that the government's role should have been that, and move on. But then they'll decry any thoughts of putting that into the government role. Whereas the ones on that already, I don't hear anybody on government healthcare complaining. The biggest social, great healthcare that nobody complains about are probably the ones railing openly that we shouldn't have Medicare for all.
My old boss was German, and he would talk to me about politics sometimes, and he's like, a lot, I don't understand, like a lot of the issues that are partisan issues in America aren't partisan issues in Germany. He's like, like social programs in Germany, it's not a partisan issue. Like everybody is in agreement that we should take care of everybody. Like if you for whatever reason you can't get a job, like you're not gonna live a luxurious lifestyle, but you should at least have your basic human needs met: food, healthcare, and shelter. And like I said, they're not like people that are on these social programs. There's still incentive to get back out and find a job and do better. But like there's also people that don't even have that as an option. They can't. They're disabled, or for whatever reason they can't work. So we're just going to say, oh, you don't get health care. You don't get to live a meaningful life because you're disabled. No, I'm not. I'm sorry. It's just,
what gets me too is a lot of times the same people making the argument that the government couldn't do health care, but they're the same people that want the government to make laws against transgender people or women getting an abortion. So you're okay with the government controlling that, but you can't get on board with universal health care. That just doesn't make sense.
That's definitely cognitive dissonance right there. It's just what I want, not any. If they're worried about everything that affects everyone else because of their values, but if it doesn't align with your values, you don't care, and you just say, "No, the government shouldn't be a part of that." Sorry if you can hear my dog.
not my tax dollars. When in actuality, you're probably going to get a full refund and not pay any taxes. But
I mean, there's just so many things your tax dollars pay for that you really don't want them to pay for, but you're going to okay it because the person you support did it. And reality is you should criticize your own people for doing things that you don't agree with. And that's just such a problem in this country.
Yeah, it's not an easy fix, and I think that's part of it. It's not a one size fits all. I don't like that our country has to rely on things like GoFundMe to help somebody when they're sick.
Yes. Absolutely.
You should never have to consider whether or not you can get a life-saving surgery because it might make you bankrupt. Like that thought should never have to cross your mind. Like, damn, I really need this surgery, but if I get this surgery, I'm gonna go into bankruptcy. And I've worked hard to make sure my credit's good, and for whatever reason, you shouldn't have to question that. Like, you should just be able to be like, oh, you know what? I need to go get my gallbladder taken out. I'm gonna go get my gallbladder taken out.
Or rationing insulin.
There you go.
Boggles my mind. And there have been reports of people dying from rationing insulin.
And it's ridiculous how much insulin costs. It's just it floors me when my nephew is on insulin for his diabetes, and when my sister told me how much it cost, I'm like, that's how. I mean, I think she said $300 a month, and that's what they pay out of pocket. That's not including the insurance that covers part of it.
And that's a massively produced item. We couldn't get the cost down.
Yeah. I mean, $300 out of pocket is a lot for a lot of people.
I totally agree. Hey, it's the other Matt.
Hey,
how you doing?
I'm doing good. Sorry I ran a little late tonight.
That's okay. It's okay. So if you want to just give everybody a brief introduction, and then we've been talking about mental health, and we've been kind of going all over, but it all relates to mental health. So if you just want to give a brief introduction, how has mental health affected your life, and how have you dealt with mental health issues personally?
Well, I had some I don't really talk about this a ton, except for with certain people. But I had some health issues about a year and a half ago, And I had some major anxiety and depression issues for about a year as a result of that. I'm a very, 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 very different person than I was about 2 years ago as a result of it. Believe it or not, I was the person who had my schedule filled out to a 15-minute increments from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m., 6 weeks in advance. So yeah, it's definitely changed me. I've learned to relax a little bit as a result of it, I guess.
So how did you learn to relinquish control and just kind of be more of a go with the flow type of person?
Gosh, I don't know. I did have a career change. That was a big part of it. I was very overly stressed in my work, and I needed time off away from that. It was something that kind of made me reevaluate what matters, I guess.
Okay. So we've been talking about healthcare right now and just how that kind of affects people. What are your thoughts on like healthcare and specifically in our country, and how do you think that can relate back to mental health?
That's a big topic. That's a really big topic. I mean, you know how I feel about our mental health care system. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. The way that we're doing it. I hate to go into this rant again because I've done it more than once here, but I mean the entire premise of insurance is cost sharing risk. The more people who participate in a risk pool, the lower the chances are that any given person has any given health issue, the lower the cost of coverage is. We're dividing it up into individual states. We're splitting our risk pool into 50 separate states right now. And then on top of that, we're splitting it into separate insurers inside of those states. So that is driving up the cost of premiums, 100% right there. So that's a major problem. Having fewer people insured in smaller pools drives up the cost. It also drives up the cost of care. So people aren't going to get care. So, I mean, we're shooting ourselves in both feet at the same time because people aren't able to get the care that they need. And that's mental health, any kind of health issues.
And another interesting thing is the ACA had a neat little feature in it that would have like revolutionized the cost of healthcare. And it got neutralized by Marco Rubio. It was the risk pools, and there were supposed to be like these fail safes where if things like market fluxes and costs just changed extraordinarily, where they actually had to raise costs or something like that, these risk pools could come in and help inject money into them to make sure that the cost doesn't go up, which would have then had the later effects of what Matt just explained. But what Marco Rubio did was he forced those in the funding bill to be revenue neutral, which for a fail-safe, that was just supposed to be money that can inject. It'll never be revenue neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So that could have revolutionized the entire thing, but he knew it. They knew that was going to be too hard for them to start beating up against the ACA. So they managed to sneak that into the funding bill.
So, fun little fact, too, about Florida politics is Senator Rick Scott. And I feel like there's conflict of interest with this guy. But anyways, he's an executive. I think he might be like a CEO of one of the biggest hospital chains in the country. So obviously his interests, and you see this across the board with other issues too, like people that are tied with oil, people that, pharmaceutical industry, but with him specifically, he owns hospitals. So he's got a vetted interest to make sure that healthcare remains expensive because that means more money in his pocket. So
wonderful.
It's a huge lobbyist industry.
Yep.
The healthcare industry is a racket. I'll be honest with you.
Absolutely. Across the board.
Well, now the whole thing that I was raised in class thinking emoluments was a law is now just like a guideline. So everyone can enrich themselves now, and they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Campaign finance is not a thing anymore either.
Oh yeah, I saw that. It was just completely, who cares?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
crazy crap that's gotten away with.
I believe we're one of the only countries that does the campaign ads. In other countries that they don't do campaigns. In fact, it's not allowed.
I'd be okay with that.
I think those need to go.
Why do we advertise candidates? Who's sitting there and was like, I was going to vote for Biden, but that Trump commercial really got me. Really swung me. The idea of Biden's America really convinced me.
So I've heard actually a psychological counter narrative to that is that they're not to appeal to you to get you to vote for them. They're actually to dissuade the middle where they can't predict their vote. So it like numbs you to all of the noise and they just they tune out.
That's interesting. That's really fascinating to me.
And Trump actually dislodged that, and people tuned in so much more. And not that ads are going to have the effect of appealing to anyone anymore, but the effect of making them numb is not working right now.
And it almost sounds like you feel like there might have been some aversion reaction to it instead. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I want to share something with you guys really quick because it relates to the cost of medicine. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but so here is a supply and demand curve. And let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. So on a normal supply and demand curve I'm sure everybody here is aware, but in the audience, here's a normal supply and demand curve. What you have is you have your supply, and then you have your demand, and then you have a price and a quantity. So what's going on here is you're basically saying so here's the suppliers on this line, and they're saying for each different price point, this is how much a supplier is willing to bring to the market. And then for each different price point, this is how much consumers are willing to buy. So what happens is you have a perfectly competitive price, which means that all the goods that are produced are purchased. And that's this equilibrium points, the market clearing price. So what you see in the pharmaceutical industry is a perfectly inelastic curve. And what that means is basically, so here's the suppliers, and it doesn't matter what price they have, the demand is always there. So they can charge, we'll just say this is $1,000, or they can charge $500, and they're still gonna be able to supply that good because people need it. It's a necessity. You have to have it for a living. So what they know is like, if people need insulin, well, guess what? I can charge $6,000 for insulin, and people are still gonna buy it.
What are you gonna do about it?
There's nothing you can do about it. So they completely exploit the market, and that's a big problem. It's a huge problem.
That's one of those things that's like a no-brainer, and it, but to see the data like that hit me. That surprised me.
So luckily, I think Congress finally got involved, and they were like, with the insulin problem, they were like, they put a price control on it, and I guarantee the pharmaceutical industry is charging that max price, even though they don't need to. It probably costs them dollars to make pennies to make insulin, but they're still gonna charge that ridiculous price because they can.
It's cheaper to get it in Canada, but then we passed laws to forbid you from getting your insulin from Canada.
I wonder why that is.
So I know like this one guy that he is definitely a liberal, but he's highly involved in the farms. He actually has his own pharmaceutical company, but so he'll defend them all the time, telling me like I'll take some of that information you just shared, Justin, and I'll take that to him, and he'll just tell me, "Oh, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like we need all this. We need the money for R&D, and like you just don't understand the cost of manufacturing." And I'm just like, well, there comes to a point where you're funneling money either to your stockholders or you're funneling into R&D for the next thing, sure. But and there's a lot of pro business that always are very keen on the R&D investment side of it because it's all about profit driving. But is there some point where the focus could be that you're just a successful company in what you've manufactured and produced? But that's not the American way. The American way has got to be find something better, more
bigger,
drive your profit. And that's what I would say the virus in American capitalism is.
We need to get away from shareholder. Like, I get it that, like, you know, you need people to invest in your company, and I'm not necessarily being like an anti-capitalist here by saying that we need to get away from shareholders being the interest of the company. We need to be more concerned with the workers and society at large. Because yes, you should, the people that invest in your company, if they take that risk on, they should be rewarded. I agree with that. However, at what cost? Like, at what point is it like, okay, we've taken care of the shareholders, let's take care of our employees now? You know, if you've been with a company for 20 years and you helped them grow from the ground level and now they're a $1 billion company, you should be making a good chunk of change because you grew with them and you helped them grow. So versus the guy that invested, you know, we'll say $100,000 in stock, and now that company's worth billions. So that, you know, yes, he invested that money and he took that risk on, but don't workers take on a risk too?
Yep. I mean,
forget about the risk. I mean, yes, you're right on the risk, but make something of yourself. That's the American dream. Go to work. You know, your efforts are rewarded.
For me, like, a personal relation to that is during this pandemic, my husband shouldn't be working around people because he has an extremely rare muscular disorder. But he was working throughout the entire pandemic while his company, majority of them were shut down. And it just infuriated me because it's like, so you're forcing this guy to literally, my husband, put his life at risk every day so you can build mass transit. And how are you going to thank him at some point? Are you going to? He's never going to see any kind of thank you for that. That's just, it's ridiculous that.
You know who will, though? Is the shareholders.
The CEOs and the, yeah.
I think it's almost like a simple fix of you can do it in the tax code. You can throw in incentives to say, well, you just hit certain benchmarks in your employees and your company before you can pay out to a stockholder. Because the stockholder is always going to be about maximizing whatever. And we just need to go against what their tendencies are with our tax code. And that should work itself out in that way, in that regard. Great. You invest so much, like Amazon is now, like, they increased their R&D, like, I think like 300% or something like that. And that's a ridiculous increase when now they're just talking about what, $3 to $5 an hour increase to their employees. take care of your employees first, then get back to it.
And
yeah.
And meanwhile, the CEO of Amazon and the CEO of Walmart and these companies that, let's face it, they if they weren't selling goods in America, they wouldn't be where they are. They're the richest people in the world. And at what point does it become excessive? Shouldn't we put a cap on it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Was it the guy at Amazon CEO? He made $600 billion during the pandemic. And that just seems like such a large amount. But when you really break it down, it's just like, that's obscenely ridiculous.
Yep.
His children's children could never spend that in their lifetime.
But I would also add that it wouldn't seem so obscene if the lowest paid employee was like $15 to $25 an hour.
Yeah.
To me, you've justified why you're so rich to me now, because you're taking care of everyone that helps you be profitable, and you're not skimping on the things that matter to get your wealth.
Do we know what Amazon pays their like low level whatever the entry level would be? Do we know if it is minimum wage?
I'm looking it up right now. Lowest paid employer or lowest paid employee at Amazon.
Because I feel like I might be overestimating them and thinking they gotta pay at least like 15 an hour.
They do pay 15 an hour. That's the minimum. It's 15.
Okay.
Oh, they did change it?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but still, I mean, when you're making, so I looked up how much Jeff Bezos makes per second. He makes $2,537 per second.
Think of the cash he just made while you said that.
Exactly.
Holy shit!
He made more in a month than he's made more in those 30 seconds than I make in a whole month.
Dude, that would be your stack would get bigger as you're making it rain. That's fucking bonkers.
Just
okay. They raised it in 2018.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of people seem to forget that a healthy, happy worker is more willing to work for you, as opposed to, paying them next to nothing and offering no kind of medical coverage. So, they can get physical and mental health help, because mental health and physical health go together. So if you're physically hurting, you're also mentally hurting.
It's
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I mean, it's something I've preached forever, but the more you do for your employees, the better morale is. The better morale is, the more your employees do for you, the higher productivity goes, the happier everybody is.
Yeah. And it's funny too. Go ahead, Matt. No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's also kind of ridiculous to integrate healthcare provisions with your job.
Mm-hmm.
I think that just needs to get separated, and probably go to the government for that option. Maybe you have private companies that can offer like supplementary healthcare to whatever the rich people want and keep them happy. I have no problem with that. But for the job, I look at businesses like one of the most successful businesses, like Starbucks. When Starbucks wanted to start, what was their pitch to their investors? I want to sell overpriced coffee, have people hang out all day at my shop that I need to provide. So that's a lot of overhead. And I want them to have free Wi-Fi. And I want to pay my employees, even the part-time employees, and I want to give them all full benefits. How do you pitch that to your investors? Well, they invested in their employees the whole time. And they are really the biggest advertising cost for them.
And unfortunately, that's not across the board through all Starbucks, because someone else that was supposed to be on works for Starbucks, and they're in Florida, where they can't even get minimum wage. They're fighting for that.
Wow.
So,
well, I was going to say my wife had worked at a Starbucks, and everybody was always very happy working there. There's never, I mean, it all depends on the crew that you work with at any given place too. But yeah, she was very happy when she worked there.
I wonder if they could get reported and bring that to their attention.
Sure
well, they're moving now to a different location, so they're getting out.
And just curious, are they like in a? Is it like a standalone store, or is where she works? Is it in like a department store or a grocery store?
I think it's standalone.
Is it okay? Then that's a corporate one. So, if corporate knew about that,
I think they would actually have words with that. Honestly,
yeah, I legit do too.
Because you can even get 2 years of online college too, even if you're not a current employee of Starbucks. So I
wish we could get them on because they would probably have a lot of information on that.
Sure, I'd be really actually fascinated to hear.
One little oh, go ahead, Matt.
No, go ahead.
One little tidbit that I wanted to drop, that's the link that I dropped there, is, so while we're talking about the health insurance debacle, the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield earned $11.5 million cash bonus in 2020, which was a slight dip because of COVID-19.
Earned. Notice the verbiage doesn't say received or was given. He earned. Carry on. That's all I have to say.
It's that seems ridiculous to me. Like, and you're going to tell me that healthcare can't be cheaper? I mean, okay, let's not talk about making it free for everybody. We can't make it cheaper.
Well, he was driving the country shaking hands with all of his policyholders, thanking them for their business personally, wasn't he? Imagine he put in a lot of hours, a lot of effort to earn that kind of bonus. Counseling grieving families. What a guy. Way above and beyond.
Meanwhile, there's no such thing as a thing that they offer, especially in Maryland right now, where there's not a copay. It's like I guess I was really spoiled with no copays back then, but now everything's copaid, and it gets to almost a ridiculous amount that sometimes I don't want to. Because when I went in for an allergy shot bi-weekly, that's a consistent chunk of money.
Yeah, and we currently are having some issues with Blue Cross Blue Shield because was a couple weeks ago we got a call and they said that our insurance was going to lapse because we hadn't filled up some questionnaire that they needed filled out, but they didn't inform us that we needed to fill out the questionnaire. So it's like, so you were just going to kind of just let us go without medical insurance. The next time we went to the hospital, we would have had no coverage and had to pay everything out of pocket. And you're just going to shock us with that?
Meanwhile, you're still paying your bill every month, but because it's...
Yeah. So yeah, they all have their shady practices that they do, and they'll play innocent, like, oh well, we sent that questionnaire. Sure you did. Where? We didn't get it. So
the quickest, I think, really quickest thing they could do for like cost savings is to like streamline their billing. They have it like a kind of like a hub and spoke model where it's like every person has their own section or region doing the same things in the whole process, and then having to come back together to a central person who has to now align everything together in one central database of billing system. And then the bills go out. And then they're not even tracking specifically what's paid or not. So you get multiple bills of something you already paid for It's just a completely messed up, inefficient system that's wasting money.
Like a few years ago, several years ago now, my daughter fell off our bed and hit her head. So we took her in, and they did the CAT scan where they put her in the big tube. Well, they tried one attempt and she wasn't having it. She was crying and squiggling around too much. So we finally we ended up having to give her some Benadryl to kind of calm her down, and they got the second one. A couple weeks later, we get the bill, and we got billed twice, and it's like, you never did the first one. Why are you trying to bill us for the one that you never even did? And it took fighting the insurance company and the hospital for them to take that off our bill. And that's like 10 grand a piece.
Jesus Christ. And like, let's be real. Most people don't have $10,000 just the first CAT scan in the bank. Yeah. Like, regardless of where you are in life, I think the statistic was like 95% of Americans, if you asked them to come up with, like, I think it was like a small number, like $1,500, if they could come up with $1,500 in 2 weeks, they couldn't do it because we're all living paycheck to paycheck, regardless of how much money we make. Because what ends up happening is, you're making more money, but you're paying more in taxes. You're paying, you get these other luxuries because you make more money, so now you can afford better things. It's crazy statistic to me.
Yeah.
So this is older. Let me think of what year this would have been. This would have been based off of 2018. It was 62% of households in the country do not have $1,000 in a bank account to cover a deductible.
Yep. And then boom, one surgery, say your kid breaks their arm, they have to go get their arm reset.
Just say boom. A pandemic happens.
Or pandemic, boom, you're done. You can't. So you're officially bankrupt after that point.
Yeah. Several years ago, when my husband first found out about his muscular disorder, it was a mess up because he went into the hospital after he tried to lift a desk and fell over and couldn't bend his legs. That's how it all started. So they went into a small local hospital, and they just gave him some muscle relaxers and sent him home. And the next thing I know, he's having a seizure in our bedroom, and I'm calling 911 because he's turning blue and having a seizure. And he was in kidney failure.
Jesus.
And that medical cost of all of that, we're going to be paying for a very long time, because he was in and out of the hospital. He was on dialysis. It cost a lot fast.
And now tie that back to mental health.
Yeah. Mentally, you're just wiped because you're going to spend the rest of probably a good chunk of the rest of our lives paying off that medical bill. And what if he ends up in the hospital again? That just keeps tacking it on. Do you think that helps our mental health when we have a bill that we're never going to be able to pay in our lifetime? Or worse, we're going to leave that with our child to pay off? That's going to affect her mentally too.
So just to bring Andrew into the conversation a little bit. So he said he was just shopping for insurance, and a decent one costs $500 a month with $10,000 deductible. I know Andrew personally, and I know he's a pretty healthy guy. We played soccer together. He's fairly healthy. So he pays $500 a month with that $10,000 deductible, being a healthy guy that will probably never have to use that insurance. I think he said he had to get a mole removed, but that's pretty common. So he pays $500 a month for something he probably won't use, but he has to have, because if he doesn't have it, if there was an incident like what happened with your husband, Destiny, he's fucked.
Mm-hmm.
And even still, the $10,000 deductible, good luck coming up with that. If something catastrophic were to happen, and it was like $100,000 hospital bill, good luck coming up with that $10,000. Most people don't have it.
Yeah, and with him, this was the second hospital time. The first time he went to the hospital, after he collapsed with the desk. He wasn't feeling, it wasn't anything you would think anything up. He was just throwing up. So you wouldn't think it's that serious. So he's like, finally talked to him after 3 days. You need to go in. I get a frantic call from the hospital, and it's like, we don't even know how your husband got here. He's in kidney failure. We don't know how he's standing and talking to us right now. That's just, they were floored by that.
And to build on that a little bit, when he goes to the hospital for the kidney failure, they're not going to address the underlying disease that caused the kidney failure. They're going to tell you go see a specialist or go somewhere else.
Yep.
They're just going to take care of the kidney while you're there at the hospital.
And
then you gotta go.
That's exactly what happened. Is he was on dialysis. They sent him home thinking he'd be okay for when he was requiring dialysis every other day, and they were going to do 4 days until he got the next dialysis. And that's when I found him in our bedroom having a seizure and had to have him taken off. And the one doctor was very honest with me. When he's in the ICU, machines are literally keeping him alive, breathing for him and everything. And he said, you need to get him somewhere else. We can't possibly help him here. We don't have the proper testing.
Oh.
And so we fought to get him down to the Rochester Mayo Clinic. I mean, it was ridiculous how hard we had to fight to get him there. And even having doctors say, I don't think the Mayo Clinic will take him. So they were going to, again, send him home with no answers after he had just had a seizure after a few days of coming out of a coma. And it's like, how is this fixing anything? You're not helping. You're just going to send him home to have him rushed here again?
I saw that kind of stuff happen with my ex-wife a lot. I don't want to talk too much about her medical issues because she didn't give me permission, but she had a lot of medical issues going on, and she'd have to go in, and then it was always the hospital. She'd go see all the specialists. They didn't know what was going on. So she'd go see the specialists. They wouldn't be able to answer it. And then eventually she would end up in the ER, and then something would have to get removed. It took a long time to finally get a diagnosis. And then after she got that diagnosis, years later and hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of medical debt, she's finally got at a point where she can manage it.
And that's a lot of times the argument is because we have so many specialized things whereas I believe it's the UK, they don't have those kind of specialized services, or you pay more for those specialized services. We dedicate a lot more to those, that if you did universal health care, that would go. And that's not true. I think there would be a baseline of medical coverage for your basic necessities. Anything that exceeds that, like Matt said, you can pay extra for whatever extras you need.
Yeah, that argument to me is so bizarre. You think that in Canada they don't have surgeons, or in Germany they don't have surgeons or pharmacists, or no, they only in America do we have this healthcare. Get the fuck out of here with that. They have the same healthcare we have. It's the same fucking shit. So the only difference is maybe doctors would be more willing to come to America because they can make more money. Also, in these countries, a lot of times they have free education. So I could see the argument. I could see the argument for, okay, healthcare's got to be expensive because doctors, physicians, pharmacists, people that go through medical school, they have to pay all this money to go through that schooling. Well, a lot of these countries have the free schooling too. So maybe if we attacked that issue as well, that could also be a way of lowering the cost of healthcare, because they gotta pay back their student loans.
There's also the fact that doctors is one of the highest rates of suicide when they're in their residencies.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I did not know that.
So, I mean, what is that saying? That obviously we're overworking them. But we just don't show a whole lot of appreciation. There's this idea that if you're a doctor, you're making buckets of money, and that's not true.
Not always. Some do. If you're a plastic surgeon, you're probably making a lot of money. But for a regular ER doctor, I agree with you. They're not. They're probably just like us, trying to make ends meet.
Mm-hmm. So, and then you add on to that a lot of the stuff they see, that has to mentally, I mean, I want a mentally sane, healthy doctor looking at me, not someone that's overworked, who's extremely depressed looking at me, because they're not going to look at me the same way as a healthy, well-rounded doctor is.
I think, like in any profession, we have the stigma of people not understanding the stress that they go through. Like, just it bewilders me how much teacher hate there is.
Yeah.
I just the sentence of that anyone could possibly think they're overpaid just baffles me.
Teachers?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. By the way, shout out for Teacher Appreciation Week. We definitely appreciate all those teachers out there working hard, especially these last couple of years.
Absolutely. It's definitely been a challenging couple of years.
Yeah.
And just what they had to adapt through, it's just incredible. And they don't get paid for that. There's so much that they do that they don't get paid for. And then the stupid Heritage Foundation can go through and just look at what they get paid for and like, well, the average teacher works 36.5 hours paid. Okay. But how do you not even throw into a study how much they have to put in for the lesson plans? If there's a heck of a lot of teachers that don't want to see their students fail and they work extra with them.
That's just the time that they're in the school, in the classroom, is that 36.5 hours. And then there's another thing, Matt, is a lot of teachers have to buy their own supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Especially if they want to do creative lesson plans that engage the students. Yeah.
Yeah. Why is it teachers are one of the only professions where we force them to have to pay for supplies?
Make police officers do it. That's
Yeah,
what I think. Maybe they'll be less likely to shoot people.
You get paid for your own bullets. Well, now you're gonna take that, a little more seriously. That each of those bullets is coming out of my pocket, so I'm gonna be stingy on them.
Maybe I'll use the taser next time.
Yeah. Won't use the excuse, I mistook my gun for my taser. That's bright yellow. Mm-hmm. Sure.
We should attack.
So, I know we're not really trying to get into police reform, but
we will. I was going to say that we will. I think that's a good topic. We haven't talked about it in a while.
So the easiest fix for me is, well, the goal should always make your police force be part of the community, and if we're going to keep throwing their budgets into these high inflated budgets where they're just like trying to keep the subway business in business. And I think I've heard people say like they buy like these crazy absurd infrared goggles. They're like 10,000 a pair. Like what they should be doing is like sponsoring picnics or something. I know they're not volunteer jobs like some of the fire departments, but they are part of the community. They do these bingo nights. They could do picnics. And that would, like, especially for a poor community, to hold a police paid for picnic so they could greet them, talk to them, be part of it. That would be like such a huge thing.
My dad actually, very conservative, but he had a really good idea on police, and he felt that we need that small town feel everywhere. A lot of smaller, very small towns, your local police by name. And he feels that if cities did that, an officer was assigned an area where they live there, and that's their area that they're assigned to. So they know their neighbors. They know everybody there. That might really reduce the police brutality because you know your neighbors.
Absolutely.
It's a lot easier to to rush to judgment when you don't know somebody, where versus if you do know them and you know their personality, oh my God, I know this person, they're just having a bad day, let me talk to them.
That's huge.
Yeah. So for somebody like my dad, who's very conservative, to come up with that idea, and me, who's extremely liberal, and we could agree to that, I'd say that's making some big strides in the right direction.
You know what that also says? That isn't a political thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's a humanity thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's weird the way so many. Boy, this is opening a can of worms. But it's weird the way so many basic humanity things have become political issues in the last handful of years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like simply wearing a mask. How that became political, I still can't wrap my head around.
I know why it became political. It was because Trump didn't want to wear the mask because it smeared his makeup. No lie, that's why he didn't want to wear the mask. So he had this big issue with masks. And then after that, after he like went on his whole tangent about why we don't have to wear masks, it's fucking off to the races. His supporters are going to run with it, no matter what happens. Even after the fact that Trump said no, wear your mask, and like he even did like a 180 on it, and he's like, no, people, please just wear your mask. Doesn't matter. That ship already sailed. They're not going back.
Yeah, they ran with it. And I've heard some really ridiculous things, that wearing a mask builds up bacteria and causes, pneumonia and all these other things. It's like, talk to a doctor, because they will debunk that really quickly.
My favorite debate was that they're designed to be used in a sterile environment. Since the real world isn't sterile, they don't work.
Yeah.
What? That was mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. But they'll come up with anything to not wear their mask and scream that it's tyranny and it's against their rights. But yet they'll wear a shirt and shoes in a restaurant or a business, no problem. Well, if the mask is a problem, you should be able to walk through that store naked if you really want to, because it's your rights.
I do support no pants.
Yeah. just on Fridays though. No pants Fridays. Screw business casual Fridays. We're gonna do no pants Fridays.
Oh, we're not already doing them?
Show of hands, who's wearing pants right now?
Allegedly.
I think actually somebody walked behind you on camera, Destiny, that wasn't wearing pants.
That would be my daughter.
Pants off, dance off.
Yeah, she does not like pants. She doesn't. I believe it's because she's autistic, and I don't think she likes the way it feels on her. So we try to give her dresses to wear. But yeah, whenever she does wear pants, as soon as we're home, they're off.
It's true too.
I support this. I don't think that's enough.
It's our human nature. We don't want to wear clothes. Come on. Society makes us do it.
Yeah, think of how much money you'd save if we just didn't have to wear clothes.
Shit, I would do it.
I support this.
I'll be right back.
Well, before you leave, Matt, I don't know if anybody has anything else to add. We can wrap it up here.
Okay.
I don't know does anybody have closing thoughts?
I think
nice cup. I like it. It's beautiful.
Got to show off my cup.
Hey, Destiny, I forgot to tell you we're thinking about changing the name.
Oh, really? After I got my nice cup? Thanks.
I'm just fucking with you. All right. Well, if you're watching, thank you for watching. If you come back and watch this on replay, thank you. Drop some comments. Let us know what you think. We'll probably be back at this again next Friday. I know that we're going to do an open mic night, which is exciting. We're going to try to get some musicians, comedians come in and share their talent. We're planning to do that on the 21st. I'm not sure what we have slated for the 14th. Another little side project. I don't think it's going to be Friday nights. I think it's going to be something that we do like as needed. But we're going to call it was it social arbitration. So we're going to get people in here that have differing beliefs, kind of talk about how they developed their political ego. And then we're going to not attack people when they talk about it. We're just going to talk to them and see like how they developed those opinions, and then we'll go from there. So,
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you everybody for coming on. It was a good conversation. I always like doing these. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Well, these are like little mental health checks. I like that.
Yeah, I like it too. Just do these at least once a month.
Yep. Kind of like our sex talk. We got to do that one again.
Yeah, we do need to do that one again. Been
Pants not required.
Pants
yeah,
aren't
no
required
pants
for
on that one. Yeah.
Shirts, maybe. We'll see. We'll see what we can get away with.
Facebook and their darn rules about wearing clothes. Ugh.
I mean, as long as we're all like this and you're not showing too much, I think
Just
we'll be
our
okay.
eyes.
Yeah.
That would have been bad for me tonight because I had a cupping session, so like I have dots all over.
Yeah, explain that.
Oh, you're in S&M. Okay, I see how it is. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming on, and thank you everybody for watching.
Cheers.
Wrong one.